When was the last time you complained about life? About cold coffee? About slow Wi-Fi? Imagine a child living in the sewers, eating scraps from trash bins, and dreaming, not about a PlayStation, but simply about a blanket. This is the story of Marko, a boy abandoned by drug-addicted parents before he even learned to speak. A story that begins in darkness, but ends on the TEDx stage. Marko was born in Bulgaria in 1997 into a family that hardly deserved to be called one. His mother was addicted to methamphetamine, spending most of her time on the streets or in drug dens. His father was an ex-convict who had just been released from prison, only to quickly fall into alcoholism, which only fueled his aggression. 3 days after Marko's birth, his mother, unable to care for him, left him in a shoebox at the entrance of a local church. Meanwhile, his father wandered off in search of alcohol, ignoring his newborn son. He never returned. His mother was too lost and broken to ever come back. But fate didn't completely abandon the boy. He was found by a woman known in the city simply as the old homeless lady who lived under a bridge. She wasn't his biological grandmother, but when she saw the helpless infant, she decided to take him in. She called him Little Light, because even in such a cruel world he became her only ray of hope. She cared for him, giving him all she could, even though she herself was almost homeless. From the very beginning, Marko never knew the warmth of a real home. Their home was the dark, damp underground tunnels. He grew up in the city's sewers, hiding from rain, stray dogs, and worst of all, people. He often witnessed other homeless children steal his last piece of bread. But the scariest moments were when they turned violent and beat him over the smallest things. One day, when he was just 5 years old, he was beaten by other homeless children for a piece of bread. He still remembers that moment vividly. I just sat there on the ground, clutching the bread, trying to protect it from them, but they attacked me like wild animals and took it away. Another time, while begging on the street, a man walked up to him, poured coffee over him and said, "Filthy mutt." It was the first phrase Marko clearly remembered for the rest of his life. It left a deep scar on the little boy's heart. He could never understand why people, instead of helping, laughed at him or despised him. It was a real shock to him. He often asked himself, why me? Why had he been abandoned? And why had life chosen him to endure such cruelty? There were times when Marko thought it would be easier to just give up. But every time he felt himself falling, the old woman would make him tea and simply hold his hand. She had nothing. Yet she kept showing him that there was another way. By the age of 6, Marko had learned not only how to survive, but how to build shelters for himself out of cardboard boxes, find food in dumpsters, and barter for food with old toys he found in the trash. He began drawing on the ground, creating his own worlds to escape reality. Drawing became his only way to express himself. But everything changed the day he turned 9. A new enemy entered his world, the darkness of the night, bringing cold, hunger, and despair. One day, Marko ventured into the forest to find shelter from the rain, and stumbled upon an old laptop. It wasn't just an object. It was a way to connect to a world that had always been out of reach. He held the laptop for hours, staring at the screen, not understanding how to use it, but feeling that this small glowing rectangle was his chance. He started searching for information, learning about technology, and watching how others lived.
No matter how hard life was, he could always make a choice and change something.
When Marko turned 9, his life was still far from being filled with hope, but it was at that time he was lucky enough to find something that would radically change his path. One day, after wandering through the forest for a long time looking for shelter from the rain, Marko stumbled upon an old broken laptop. It was covered in dirt and branches, but despite its condition, something about it caught his attention. To others, it was just an object with no value, but to him, It was a chance, maybe even his only chance for a new life. Marko didn't know what to do with it. He had no instructions, no support, but the laptop keys seemed magical to him. He couldn't understand how it worked, but it was simply calling to him. He felt that there was some kind of power in this device that could help him find a way out of his dark world. At first, he simply sat next to it, staring at the device without knowing where to start. The only thing he understood was that the laptop was his opportunity to connect with something bigger than the street fights and sleepless nights under bridges. Gradually, he started looking more carefully at the keys, and realized they weren't just there for pressing random buttons. They were tools. Tools he could use to create, to change things. With no education, Marko decided to teach himself to read. He started with simple texts he found on food packaging in the trash that had become his home. He studied every word, every letter, trying to understand how they combined to form meaning. It was incredibly difficult as his parents hadn't given him even basic upbringing, and he had never managed to stay in school. But this passion for learning became the foundation of everything that would happen next. However, what fascinated him most was the idea that the laptop could connect him to something extraordinary: the internet. He started searching for Wi-Fi. It was a strange process, sneaking up to cafes, hiding in the bushes nearby, trying to set up a connection. But he managed. He spent hours sitting under cafe windows, silently watching people work on their computers, watching YouTube videos. Without sound, Marko just observed the movements on the screen. He could sit for hours, studying the gestures, which to him seemed not random but part of a giant puzzle he had to solve. Then one day, during such a moment, he stumbled upon a video explaining the basics of programming, without sound, but with captions. He watched these videos day after day. His teachers became people from distant corners of the world, who had no idea they were helping him build a foundation for a new life. He didn't fully understand all the technical terms, but one thing became clear to him: this was his opportunity. It was his mission, and Marko decided that he would see it through. At 11 years old, after months of trial and error, he wrote his first program. It was a simple thing, but for him, it was a real achievement. It was called Bread Ration Calculator, because in his words, it was something that would help him at least slightly balance what he ate. Every day, when he managed to get a few pieces of bread, he would count them using his calculator to make sure he left nothing for tomorrow. It was simple, but Marko was proud. He had created something that actually worked. That moment was a turning point for him. All those years spent on the streets, homeless and without support, now began to make sense. He realized that even in such a harsh reality, it was possible to build his own future if he had the will and determination. And although it was only the first step, it was already a huge victory for a small boy living in a world without hope. When Marko turned 12, his life was struck by a new, devastating blow. His grandmother, the same homeless woman who had found him as a baby, abandoned in a box near a church, passed away. She had been the only person who had ever hugged him, the only one who had given him even a glimpse of hope for life, though not always consciously. She had replaced his parents in a way, though in her case it was hard to call it motherhood in the usual sense. She simply gave him a chance to live, to survive in a world where there was no place for the weak. She died of hypothermia. She had no roof over her head and, as always, spent her nights under a bridge even when the cold set in. And although Marko had seen her deteriorating condition, although he had tried to care for her and help her, it was not enough. One morning, he woke up and found her lifeless body. No warmth, no protection from the world, no way to save her from what was inevitable. He was left alone. Alone again. Marko didn't cry. He didn't even know how to cry properly. He had no time for it. He sat all night by her body, simply staring into the darkness and the fading world around him. His heart felt empty, but he knew this moment would be etched into his soul forever. He was overwhelmed by the feeling that he had no one and nothing left. His life now felt like a blank sheet of paper, and he didn't even know how to begin filling it. But instead of giving up, he began to write. Marko took a scrap of paper and a pen he had found in the trash a few weeks earlier, and started writing a letter. A letter to God. Even though he had never really believed in religion, he didn't care where he was reaching out. He just needed to express what he was feeling, the thoughts that were tearing his soul apart. He wasn't writing in hopes of a reply. He didn't believe God would answer, but he believed in the possibility. The letter was simple, almost childlike. God, I don't know who you are or why I'm here. Why do I live the way I live? Why am I alone again? My grandma died. She was the only one who loved me. But now I'm alone again. What should I do? Do I have a chance to become someone? Or am I just a dirty, forgotten puppy that no one needs? They were words filled with pain and doubt. The letter had no particular purpose. It was simply a cry from the soul. For Marko, it was the only way to say his feelings out loud, even if no one was listening. He finished the letter, rolled it up, and left it next to his grandmother's body, as if leaving behind the last connection to the only person who had given him even a drop of warmth in this world. This moment became a turning point. Everything depended on how Marko would survive this loss. It was the final drop. Marko realized that if he wanted to change his life, if he wanted to do something meaningful with what he had left, he would have to do it himself. No one would come. No one would reach out a helping hand. Everyone around him was either fighting for their own survival or already beyond saving. So, he made a decision. This was his last chance. Two paths lay before him. Either he would become someone, or he would remain just another forgotten, unwanted soul. Like the homeless kids who had once beaten him for a piece of bread. He had nothing to lose. So Marko swore to himself that he would not stop, that he would not allow himself to fall. In that moment, his heart grew stronger. He was forced to overcome his painful grief, and become the person he had always dreamed of being. Even though the path ahead was invisible and full of darkness, Marko knew it was now or never. That very evening, he placed the letter on the ground, looked up at the dark sky, and for the first time without fear, asked himself, why not? 2 years after the loss of his grandmother, Marko finally realized that his life could not continue as it had before. He decided to seek any opportunity to change his future, and if anyone had told him that this could happen because of one incident, one night, he wouldn't have believed it. But that's exactly how it happened. At the age of 14, trying to keep his spirit alive and not let his dreams fade, he stumbled upon an online hackathon. It was an event for young programmers, startups, and technical geniuses from all over the world, where one could win a prize for creating an innovative product. The theme of the hackathon was quite specific: solutions for social problems. And although Marko had neither money nor a home, his mind filled with ideas was the only wealth he had. He called himself Ghost Boy 97. The pseudonym he used online. Why Ghost Boy? Because he felt like he didn't exist in this world. He was like a ghost. Unnoticed, ignored. But he didn't give up. It was his name, his identity. Marko worked on the project relentlessly. Like a madman, he sat for hours, nights, absorbing every detail and every opportunity that could become a part of his app. He only had an old phone, without stable internet access. But it was enough to write code, process data, and search for ideas. The only place where he could connect to the internet was a local cafe with free Wi-Fi. He was so dedicated to his work that he often sat on the cold asphalt outside the cafe while his phone charged, still focused on his project. His app was called Lightbox. It was an innovative idea, born from real experience, from his own painful experience of living without a home. Lightbox was a service that allowed homeless people to find the nearest spots with hot food, free Wi-Fi, and medical help. Marko thought that if he could at least ease the lives of others, just like his grandmother did for him, then he would have achieved a great goal. This app wasn't just a technical product. It was meant to change the lives of those at the very bottom of society, to give them a chance for even minimal comfort and help in the places they most often found themselves: on the streets, in parks, under bridges. For Marko, this project was more than just winning a hackathon. It was his answer to the question he had asked himself after losing his grandmother: if I can't change the world by myself, at least I can help others not stay in the dark. When the final day came, and Marko received the news that he had won the hackathon, he couldn't believe his eyes. Although no one believed in him except himself, his project became the winner. His story began to spread, shared by thousands of people, and most importantly, Forbes wrote an article about him. Tech companies became interested in his work. He became known, not because he had money or resources, but because he had an idea, an incredible determination to make it happen. This was the moment that changed everything. After the Forbes publication, doors opened for Marko. He received a scholarship to study in Germany, offers to work with leading startups, and his app caught the attention of many organizations working with the homeless. He not only became a hackathon hero, but also got the chance to start a new life. Marko realized that no situation is final, and although he started from a low point, from darkness and hopelessness, he managed to overcome it. His efforts, determination, and loyalty to his goal allowed him to break through all obstacles and become an example for thousands of others who thought they had no future. But for him, this was just the beginning. He knew that now, with new opportunities, he had to continue working for the benefit of others. And this new stage of his life was just beginning. Riz is now a millionaire. He's only 27. This might seem extraordinary for someone who grew up without a roof over his head, without parental love and support. But Marko didn't become just any millionaire who simply enjoys the fruits of his labor. He became a symbol on which not only his success rests, but also the hope for thousands of others who find themselves in similar circumstances. His company today is one of the leaders in the social technology market. It specializes in the development of applications and platforms that help solve social problems. Marko and his team create technologies that help people who find themselves in difficult life situations: the homeless, victims of violence, those suffering from depression, and even those who feel everything is lost. Their apps save thousands of lives every year, giving people a chance at a new life. Every project they launch has one goal: to change someone's life for the better, to give people hope that they can rise again, even when it feels like the ground is crumbling beneath their feet. But despite this brilliant success, Marko hasn't become someone who forgets his roots, and although his life now looks like a story of incredible achievement, he still wears an old key around his neck. It's not just an object, it's a symbol of where he came from and what he had to endure to be where he is now. This old key was once found in those ominous sewers and underground tunnels where he lived as a child. He didn't just leave it in his life as a souvenir or memory, he wears it every day because this key is his connection to a reality he will never forget. It's a constant reminder of who he was and who he has become. A key that doesn't open doors, but opens the entire story of his life, a story of struggle, betrayal, and loss, but also a story of unbreakable hope, determination, and commitment to his goal. When asked why he doesn't want to get rid of the key, he simply replies, "Because if I forget who I was, I'll forget why I live." This is his inner manifesto. The key reminds him of those who couldn't rise, who got lost in their problems and never found their way to the light. But it's also a reminder to himself, not to forget that not everything was easy, and that his success is not the result of luck, but the result of extraordinary willpower and determination. Marko often says that he doesn't want his life to be just a story of success, he wants people to see more in him. An example of how even from the worst conditions, a great breakthrough can be made. He wants everyone who is at rock bottom right now, who feels that no one needs them anymore, to understand, there is a chance. There is an opportunity, there is a way, even if it seems dark and impassable now. He hasn't forgotten where he came from and continues to help those still where he was. His foundation for children living on the streets, finances projects for the homeless, organizes educational and employment programs for youth in difficult circumstances. He spends millions creating shelters for the homeless, providing people with food and medical care, and offering educational programs to give those who have lost everything a chance to start over. Marko has become not just a millionaire, he has become a symbol of what is possible. Now his story inspires millions of people worldwide. And even when he sits on a luxurious soft couch in his office, he still doesn't forget that old sewer manhole where he started, still lives in his heart. It's a part of his soul, and he will never allow himself to forget who he was so that he won't lose who he has become. This is not just a story about a boy who became rich. It's a story about choice. It's a story about a person who in moments when the whole world was against him, made his own choice. A choice that didn't depend on circumstances. A choice that was shaped not by the outside world, but by what was inside him, by his unbreakable will. Marko had nothing except his dream. No home, no family, no money. But he had one undefeatable thing, a dream. He didn't give up when he was beaten for a piece of bread. He didn't give up when life threw him into the darkest places. He didn't give up because he knew it wasn't the end. He didn't become a victim of circumstances. He became the person who could change them. And one day, that dream became a plan, and the plan, like all great plans in human history, changed the world. Because it didn't just change his life, it changed the lives of many others. He gave hope where there was none. He gave a chance where there was none. And now you're listening to this story. Maybe in a warm room, with a phone in your hand, a cup of coffee, and the world seems so close and accessible. You have more than Marko had. You have all the opportunities to make your own choice. Maybe you're going through difficulties right now. Maybe you're in a situation where it seems like nothing will change. But remember, all you need is will. The will to take a step, even when you can't see the final goal. The will to seek solutions when it seems there is no way out. Maybe your dream won't become a plan today, but every step forward is already part of that plan. Don't waste the chance you have right now. You have more opportunities than you've ever had, and more than Marko had in his early years. Don't forget that even in the darkest moments there is a chance to step into the light. You can be the one who changes your destiny. You can be the one who changes this world. So make the choice. Start today, because no matter how hard it is, you can do it. You already have everything you need to do. So,